Listen, guys, boxing is no stranger to rivalries. The biggest rivalry in boxing right now may just be Oscar De La Hoya versus Eddie Hearn as promoters.
Hearn versus De La Hoya? I got the name for the pay-per-view right now. A Vanity Affair.
All right, let's talk about it here on Deep Waters on ProBox TV. Welcome, everyone, to Deep Waters, only on ProBox TV, where we take a deeper dive into boxing's top stories. I'm George DiMattelis, a.k.a. Maury Povich, and we're going to talk to Pali Naji and Chris Algieri of Vanity Fair. You remember Current Affair back in the day with the music?
You know what? The young bucks are not going to understand that.
They're going to understand that. I'm sure they got episodes of it on
I want to see you guys
YouTube.
in the comments if you know what we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. This was before Maury started saying, "You are not the father."
That's okay. Most kids know him as "You are not the father."
Yeah, exactly. But I digress, because let's talk about this rivalry, guys, because Oscar De La Hoya, he's had some choice words, although he hasn't specifically on social media pointed out Eddie Hearn, but he is making it known, and people think he is talking about Eddie Hearn when he says, nobody is coming to my country or city and think they can take over boxing. I'm a fighter first, and I will fight hard for what I love the most. That's boxing Viva. Now, Eddie Hearn is from England, and some people thought maybe it was Turki Al-Sheikh from Saudi Arabia, but then this one is maybe a little more clearer. No promoter is coming into my territory and think they can take over my sport. This is war. This is aimed toward a person who doesn't know ish about boxing. All right, Chris, what do you make of this rivalry here between Oscar De La Hoya and Eddie Hearn?
Well, I mean, initially you're going to think like, oh, well, you know, Canelo was with De La Hoya. They had a big falling out. Obviously, he's a cash cow in the sport. The Golden Boy with the Golden Boy of boxing made a lot of sense. Canelo obviously left. Now he's over there with Eddie. So a part of it could be that. But I think also part of it is just the fact that, you know, listen, Oscar De La Hoya is a fighter. And you're coming to his hood. And you're promoting shows with the biggest money guy around. They're talking about Turki Al-Sheikh, who's coming over now and helping and working with Eddie Hearn to do fights in LA. Listen, the way De La Hoya looks at it, like, this is a turf battle. This is my town. You're coming into my country, my city, and you're going behind my back. This is the way that De La Hoya is looking at it, which I understand. Again, he's a fighter. He's a Mexican-American. He's got that machismo. And it's
territorial as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot, especially in you know, coming from East LA, like, territory is a big deal. And I think for him, he feels like Eddie is coming over and stepping on his toes. And De La Hoya, Oscar's doing what Oscar does. He gets to tweeting. He lets people know how he feels. And, you know, it could be momentary. It could be long-lasting. But, you know, obviously he has some beef with Eddie Hearn.
Yeah, you never know what's going on with Oscar De La Hoya. All right, Paulie, what do you make of a Vanity Affair there between those two?
Yeah, I guess it could start out with the Canelo stuff. But Canelo's actually over at PBC now, so they don't really have to fight over Canelo. But I'll tell you what, something else they can be fighting about is the possibility of the zone being you know, Eddie having a bigger share in the DAZN sweepstakes, so to speak. They both have dates on DAZN, but it seems like Eddie's Matroom gets treated a little with, what's the word I'm looking for? They get superiority. Priority, exactly. Priority over Goldenboy over there at DAZN. So Oscar's on his high horse right now. Ryan Garcia just won a big fight. That's his mega star, and he's got the biggest star in boxing on the contract. So he might be thinking, hey, man, you know, I'm on my high horse right now, man. I'm going to take aim at this guy who's been getting under my nerves.
Feeling strong? You say he's feeling strong?
He's feeling strong, yeah. He's feeling strong. So Eddie's, Eddie, I don't know what Eddie thinks about it. I know Eddie has made some lower level, like, little zingers here and there, but Oscar's going the direct approach. Like Danny DeVito said in Batman Returns, the direct approach. Yes. I like that.
When he's a penguin, yeah. All right, well, let's see if we can settle this hypothetically in the ring. Okay, we decided to put a 5 versus 5. Now, Queensberry and Matroom have done that in Saudi Arabia. So we're going to do it here on Deep Waters, a hypothetical. The Golden Boy 5 versus the Matroom 5. And here's what we have as the lineup. Zurdo Ramirez against Jai Opataya. Boots Ennis versus Jose Ramirez. Barboza versus Haney. Subriel Matias versus Cepeda. And Bektemir Melikuziev versus Diego Pacheco. All right, Chris, in this 5v5, who you got? Who thinks wins that one?
First of all, I love this idea. Right?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
So in recent history, if two promoters didn't like each other and they were throwing jabs back and forth, that meant their fighters were never going to fight. And you're never going to see that. If they don't like each other, they don't want to do business together, they don't want to make money with each other, they don't want to make money together, Now, though, you get in Turki Al-Sheikh. He's like a third-party member. He comes in. He's able to broker these deals now. He also likes competition. He likes the idea of pitting egos against each other. I'm going to take Matroom, Eddie Hearn. I'm going to take Goldenboy, Oscar De La Hoya. I'm going to have them match up their guys in their weight classes. Neither one wants to lose to the other.
Right.
Ego plays a big role in this. And promoters aren't fighters, but, I mean, Oscar was, but they still fight. And they still argue, and they still negotiate, and they still don't want to give up anything. They don't want to lose half a step. So the idea there, when you have a third-party broker, we're going to call Al-Sheikh, but really, I mean, he's becoming a bit of a promoter himself.
The financier
as
well.
Yeah, financier who's putting this up. Putting up the money so these promoters can actually go against each other and it's worth it for everybody. It becomes possible. You know, I was looking at Jaron Ennis being signed by Matroom and being like, man, we're never going to see that Virgil Ortiz fight. But now with this opportunity where you could potentially get these 5-on-5s and match for his fight, like, whoa, this fight's actually
Sleeping on Tim Tszyu, man.
This fight can happen. No. So listen, I think regardless, even if Tim Tszyu were to beat, I think that
Ennis
fight.
with the winner?
Either way, absolutely.
Ooh.
But even notwithstanding, even if Virgil were to lose, I still really like the Virgil Ortiz and his fight, and I think that's a fight that those guys should fight at some point because we were really close to it not too long ago. So, but yeah, now the landscape of the sport has changed, obviously because of the entry of Turki Al-Sheikh and his ability to make these fights happen, but also his tendency to enjoy competition and to get these guys to just come to the table. So, yeah, I know. I love this idea. I didn't get to look at each individual one, who's going to win what. I mean, but it's tit for tat.
Some of them are pretty tough.
So
really tough.
Can we take a look at that fight card again so that we can get a view of the fight card and that hypothetical? Thank you very much there. Yeah, Goldenboy versus Matroom. So Chris, who would win overall?
That's a 50-50 fight. Jai Opetaia, he's obviously phenomenal. He's super athletic. He's been looking really, really good. But Zerto is a really tough out.
He's tough.
Yeah.
He's tall. He's big. He's looking really good at
Only lost to
cruiserweight.
Bivol at light heavy.
Only lost to Bivol, and he was killing himself to make the weight. He's actually much better at this weight. That's as close to a 50-50 fight as you can get. Boots and Ramirez, I got Jose Ramirez or Boots. Yeah, I got Boots all day on that.
Yeah.
Too big.
Yeah, Ramirez is a little past it.
A little past the round. Honor Barboza, Devin Haney. Even Devin coming off of the loss and to Ryan, I still pick him over Barboza, especially based on how Barboza performed that night. Subriel Matias and William Zepeda. That's
my second favorite
That's
fight.
That's a fun fight, no matter how
that's
you slice it. You got two guys who throw tons of punches. Matias definitely, actually not definitely, doesn't necessarily have the power advantage. He's the bigger guy because he's 140 and Zepeda is 35. Very, very fun fight. And honestly, I wouldn't count Zepeda out in that fight. How busy he is, and I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for in terms of his boxing IQ and ability. Subriel Matias, I don't think is that clever, but he's a murderous guy. And then Melakuzia and
Pacheco?
That's Pacheco all day long.
Okay.
Pacheco, I mean, size-wise, ability, and based on past performances, I'm going Pacheco on that for sure.
All right. We'll take a quick break here on Deep Waters. Thank you very much to the production for putting that card back up there. We'll get Paulie's thoughts on that 5v5 on the other side here on Deep Waters. Welcome back to Deep Waters here on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. Turki Al-Sheikh needs to make that Goldenboy Matroom 5v5. That would be fire. Anyway, this weekend coming up in Fresno, Virgil Ortiz Jr. makes his return to the ring, taking on Thomas Delorme. And if you're looking to make some money and are interested in the betting lines on that fight and another big fight coming up in a week's time, here is The Better Side with Jim Rodriguez.
Back in the ring on the better side here on ProBox TV. Hey, we did okay last week with the Ryan Garcia, Devin Haney money. We're back to get that and some more. Let's focus in, thanks to our buddies at Sportsbetting.ag, on Virgil Ortiz Jr. against Thomas Delorme. If you go to Sportsbetting.ag, you'll see Ortiz a huge favorite, minus 3,300, while Delorme is the underdog at plus 1,200. No thank you, no interest in that. So here is the better side of that fight. How about under 4.5 rounds? That's almost even money, minus 105 at sportsbetting.ag. Listen, Ortiz may need a map to get to the ring. He has fought one professional round since August of 2022 due to various health problems. Normally, I would think we would want rounds for a guy that's only fought so few rounds since August of 22, but He has just signed on to fight Tim Tszyu in that mega fight in August in LA. So what does that mean? Get in and get out. We don't want any cuts, bruises, nicks, breaks, nothing. Under 4.5 rounds is the bet, and I even got one even better for you. How about Ortiz by knockout, TKO, or disqualification in the first 3 rounds? That's plus 250 at Sportsbetting.ag. Remember, Ortiz 20-0 with 20 knockouts. That's what I'm going with, and I think you should as well. And don't forget, next week it's Canelo Mungia from Vegas, and we will be in Sin City to give you all the reports and news, and of course, the better side right here on ProBox TV. And the early lines on that, Canelo minus 550, Mungia plus 375, and those bets are getting tighter at Sportsbetting.ag. I'm Jim Rodriguez, and that's the better side.
Thank you very much, Jim. And looking to make some money there, you definitely want to listen to the better side. And of course, the big Cinco de Mayo fight, or at least that weekend of Cinco de Mayo, is Canelo Alvarez versus Jaime Munguia. And you know what? People are starting to think that Jaime Munguia has a real chance here. There's a groundswell, more of a support for Jaime Munguia to win this fight. So, Paulie, do you agree with that? And what does Munguia have to do to win this fight and maybe just shock the world by taking out Canelo?
I mean, listen, if there's a time to get to Canelo, it's starting to approach us, right? I mean, even in the times Canelo's been defeated in the past, you kind of could see he's still up there. He's still of that level. But we're starting to wonder if Canelo is going to remain at this level. And as one of the kryptonites that Canelo has, had to face is guys who are active in the ring. And that's sort of been the thing that has bothered him a little bit more. And Bebo kind of showed that, he doesn't like to fight at a fast pace. He likes to slow down the pace, and he forces his opponent, when he's at his best, he forces his opponent to slow down the pace. Will he be able to force Munguia to slow down his pace? Munguia's hittable, so he may be able to, put him into submission with some good shots. But if you're not able to slow down the pace, Munguia has a very good chance, because at a fast pace, it's hard for Canelo to win those rounds. Yeah,
they're saying the 6th round is kind of that threshold where maybe the fight will turn in favor of Munguia. What do you make of that theory, if you will, Chris, about that fight?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions in this fight because we got to think about which version of each man is going to show up in the ring next Saturday night. So Munguia is an ever-improving fighter. He showed that in his last fight. He's teamed up with Freddie Roach now. He looked fantastic last time out with John Ryder. John Ryder's a very, very tough out for anybody. Has given world-class fighters a lot of trouble. Munguia pretty much ran through him. And obviously Ryder gave Canelo some troubles.
Yeah.
Some troubles, I should say. I mean, Canelo obviously won the fight, was way ahead, dropped him and everything. But Munguia's dominance over Ryder was even more impressive than Canelo. And then Canelo, we're always talking about father time. We're talking about age. You're talking about approaching the time when Canelo is going to be overtaken. So we never know which version of Canelo is going to show up. But in terms of trends, these guys are on opposite trends. We got Munguia going up. We got Canelo going down. Are they going to intersect at the right time for there to be an upset, for Munguia to take the victory? That's really the question. It's not something that we're going to know pretty much until fight night. I've had a funny feeling about this fight in terms of Munguia's chances for a while now. I'm a big proponent of Canelo Alvarez and what he's been able to do in the ring. I don't know though. I got a funny feeling about Munguia and his preparation. Champ, you mentioned the things that give Canelo trouble, and you mentioned the output. You mentioned that he throws punches now. He also has trouble with bigger guys, right? Bivol, taller guy, 75. Munguia is every bit a light heavyweight as anybody in the world today. He's the biggest 68-pounder I've seen in a very long time. He's 6 feet tall.
He won his first world title at 154. It's crazy.
Wow.
Beating Saddam Ali. That's crazy.
Yeah. And, I mean, he's always been big for every weight class he's been in. He's still big for 68. Yeah. And, he's improving. He developed the right hand all of a sudden, a punch that I never really thought he had. He kind of just put it out there to land the left hook, but he used it as a very good weapon against John Ryder.
And Roach is a very good offensive coach. So these are the little subtle things that you may see with the entrance of Freddie Roach.
So there's a lot of underlying issues that I've been listening to and seeing and kind of getting a feeling for. Yeah, Munguia is a very, very live dog.
Man, this is going to be a fascinating fight, Cinco de Mayo weekend. And, of course, these two will have all the analysis you need and much more with the big fight breakdown on our YouTube channel. So go ahead, like and subscribe that video. The best analysis of this Canelo-Munguia fight that you will see on the internet when it comes to boxing. All right, Deep Waters returns on the other side.
Wednesday Night Fights. On the next Wednesday Night Fights, May 8th, The UK's Robbie Davies Jr. takes on former IBF world champ Sergey Lipinets.
Wednesday night fights.
Wednesday Night Fight Series continues here on ProBox TV, May 8th. I mean, what a week. You're going to have Canelo fighting against Mungia, then Monster Inoue is going to be fighting, and then you have Wednesday Night Fights. It is going to be fantastic, live from the ProBox TV Event Center, Plant City, on YouTube, and, you know, bilingual as well. So watch one fight in English, Spanish, alternate. It's good for your brain. Anyway, let's continue here on Deep Waters. Don't forget, we will be live in Vegas during fight week of the Canelo Mungia event fight. That is going to be fantastic. Live updates all the time here on ProBox TV. All right. Well, there's a lyric from Wyclef Jean, who's one of my favorite artists. He says, money breaks groups up like the 5 heartbeats. And it looks like money's going to break up the pairing of Derrick James and Errol Spence Jr. Now, Derrick James says he's owed a certain amount. Errol Spence is saying, no, he's owed less. I mean, it is really nasty. There's percentages involved, and the difference is really about $2 million, which is a lot of money. Paulie, let me ask you about this situation between Errol Spence Jr. and his manager, Derrick James. How sloppy can this get, and how do you solve this issue here? What do you know?
It's tricky. I mean, I'm hearing it could go to court and whatnot. Not the first time I've seen this. It's very interesting. I remember Kevin Rooney taking Mike Tyson to court and winning money from Mike Tyson in court when Tyson left him. So not the first time we've seen these kind of things going to court. You know, I guess it comes down to the prior agreement, but again, sometimes you have a prior agreement. I mean, when you've been with a guy since the amateurs, prior agreements are very, very vague. You don't really consider, intangibles like, the percentage of the split of the pay-per-view, of the tickets and whatnot, So yeah, it could get tricky now, man, especially once things go sour, which seems like they have gone after Spence took that L against Crawford.
So how did you manage the money situation? I know we don't want to get into details, but how did you
have to have an agreement with the trainer beforehand. You have to have an agreement with the trainer beforehand. I don't want to talk about my finances, but I can remember hearing about Oscar De La Hoya. He used to have a set agreement. He used to hire trainers, and you would get paid $200,000. You take it or leave it, And you hire you for this camp. Each camp is going to be $200,000. That's what I remember, and I remember hearing about that and saying, because he makes so much money, he's not going to give 10% of so much amount of money. Obviously, Oscar, we're talking about astronomical money, especially for the 90s that he was making that kind of money. But yeah, you have to have an agreement, even if it's verbal. It's got to be before a fight. You know what I mean? Obviously, if you're with a trainer, a new trainer, maybe it's got to be a little bit more than verbal. But if it's an old trainer that you've been with for a while, I think it's got to be at least verbal. It has to be have been spoken about prior to going into situations like that. Yeah,
Chris, what's your take on how fighters have to deal with the money aspect of all of that?
Well, in this particular case, I think it's obvious. It's a breakdown of communication. That's the issue here. When you really think about it, it's all about communication. Because, listen, I know a lot of people say, well, trainer gets 10%. Yeah, well, that's not really how it goes. There's nowhere written in stone that's how it is, and that's why we have contracts, and that's why these agreements are happening. But also, there's communication. So, like you mentioned, Champ, about De La Hoya. Yeah, when you got a guy who's making $25 million, 10%'s a big number.
Yeah, 2.5.
For like $2.5 million. That's a lot for a guy who went out there to fight. So there has to be communication before, and you got to go back and forth. And it's unfortunate because money does a lot of damage. It can do damage to family as well. And with a trainer-fighter relationship, a lot of it's very close to blood. You're it becomes very familiar over a lot of time, especially when you've been with someone for a long time. It's very familiar, and you care about each other. But money can make things funny. That's what they say, right? So you got to have communication prior to a fight, because listen, just like a trainer might go, "Hey, man, our verbal agreement was that it was 10%." The fighter go at the end and be like, "Yeah, but our nonverbal agreement that you were going to get me to win, I didn't win. So this is what you're getting now." So there's you can go. I can see both ways. But at the end of the day, it's a breakdown of communication. You got to have these lines set. I'm not saying you not necessarily have to have a contract between each other, but handshake agreements matter. And being able to speak prior. Hey, listen, man, this is a roundabout where we're going to be. This is what I think we're going to earn for this fight. And listen, it could be ongoing communication as well, but I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. You have to communicate. Listen, guys, we're in April now.
Yeah.
They fought in July of last year. And this is coming out now.
I think if it's gonna have a written contract though, it's got to be one fight at a time.
Yes.
Because
Things change
fast when it comes to trainer fighter. So it has to be one fight at a time. If you're gonna go that route, it's got to be literally be fight by fight.
But the same token, these guys should be communicating now.
Yeah.
Don't take this court. Figure this out.
Yeah,
Guys,
because they were
don't-
in together so
now
long.
you're paying lawyers. Just figure it out.
And it seems like maybe Derrick James has moved on over more so than Errol Spence. We'll see what happens. Quick break here on Deep Waters. We'll come back with more. Welcome back to Deep Waters here on ProBox TV, your boxing channel. All right, Chris, how complicated does it get when you have to distribute all the money to everyone that helped you in camp and throughout your training?
It's so complicated that I actually hired people to help me do it because I need a financial advisor and a good accountant, and I think every fighter needs that. You need a good lawyer, you need a good an accountant, and I think once you get to a certain level, financial advisor and wealth management is really important. But yeah, it's very, very difficult. I remember speaking to a lot of people. Listen, it took me a long time to make money. I was about 30 years old before I ever really made any kind of money. And I was terrified. I was terrified of the numbers in my bank account because I didn't know what to do with that much money. So I remember speaking to a lot of people to help me out, kind of how to traverse the minefield of dealing with that kind of money and the taxes and paying people and the whole like. And I remember I spoke actually to a bunch of actors, high-level Hollywood actors, and and they're entertainers we're entertainers just as much as they are.
Right.
And a lot of times entertainers take home about a third of their money. Ooh. And I was blown away by that until I started to realize that that's not that far off. The output in terms of training expenses, food, lodgings for your team, paying your team, which is another expense, obviously. We're just talking about that with Derrick James and Errol Spence. Taxes.
That's a big one.
Taxes.
Yeah.
Listen,
And depending what state you live in, that can be more
depending
or
on the
less.
state. You're not beating anybody on that. Travel, everything. All those things add up very, very, very quickly. Taxes is obviously the biggest chunk, and again, like you said, Champ, it depends on where you're fighting. I fought most of my career in New York City, so I had to deal with big tax burdens. But yeah, it is very difficult. It's very difficult for young fighters to traverse. Taxes are something that unfortunately isn't really taught in school, so guys don't really know much about it. And when it comes time to it, yeah, you need some help. And I think it's really important to make sure that you reach out for other people. But listen, those numbers you see in papers, in the newspaper, and on TV, it's not always the same. It's not always the real number. So keep that in mind.
Probably how complicated is it with all the finances and dealing with all that stuff?
Yeah, I'll start by saying what Chris is saying. The numbers you see aren't always the exact numbers, aren't always the accurate numbers. But yeah, I mean, you have to keep everything in mind budget-wise, and sometimes you need people to help you. But sometimes those people that help you, it also costs a certain amount of money. So you've also got to get to a certain level before you can hire even those kind of people. Mm-hmm. So before that, you're already trying to learn on your way up the ladder, trying to divide up the smaller numbers that you're making on the way up. But either way, I mean, there's not a lot of margin for error, room for error, especially with taxes. The state you live in matters. Also, again, the agreements you come up with all your team members. You have team members, you have a cut man, you have a trainer, sometimes you have a conditioning trainer, sometimes you have a dietitian, sometimes you have, accountants,
chefs,
doctors. It adds up. Granted, these are all tax write-offs. But nonetheless, in terms of gross money, yeah, you're going below half easily, close to a third, of course. But regardless, there's expenses to be paid, even if you can write a lot of those off.
And you can always make some extra money there by going to Sportsbetting.ag and following.
And if you don't,
the better side.
And if you don't pay those taxes, you're gonna pay them later. Then you'll really be in debt.
Yeah, it seems like taxes for everybody, fighters or non-fighters, is the big deal and so important. All right, that does it for Deep Waters. Don't forget, like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and download the app where apps are available. This is Deep Waters only on ProBox TV.